The pain is extremely difficult to describe. Like somebody's trying to rip my eyeball out of my face or repeatedly thrust a hot knife into my eye. So yeah, I was in a shopping centre of all places. I just felt this pain happen in my head and I dropped to my knees and I thought I was dying.
For the last 20 years, Dan Bailey has suffered from these debilitating attacks, known as cluster headaches.
I can get anywhere between 1 and 10 cluster headache attacks a night, which means I don't get any real remission period.
The condition has baffled doctors, and treatment often involves strong painkillers and oxygen therapy.
One doctor gave up and just gave me a script for Panadeine Forte and about 10 repeats, and so they can't do anything for you.
It's estimated 14,000 Australians suffer from the condition, also nicknamed suicide headaches.
Go away, go away, go away.
I've lost 2 or 3 friends through the support groups that just couldn't take it anymore. And it gets to you. I've been there in my car on the side of the road. I lined up the biggest gum tree I could see and I was going to run into that 120 without a seatbelt. I figured that'll do it. I won't have to worry about it anymore. I just sat in that car and I just cried and cried. Eventually figured out that I didn't want to die. I had to take my life back, and I found that with the psychedelics.
Psychedelics like LSD, ayahuasca and psilocybin, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, are more commonly known for giving a mind-altering recreational high. But researchers hope their medicinal use may prove far more powerful.
I found a psychedelic or tryptamine by the name of 5-MeO-DOLT. I started out with one very small microdose every 5 days, and after the second dose my headaches basically ceased. The next thing I did was learn how to grow magic mushrooms. We have psilocybin cubensis, or magic mushrooms, dried out, 5-MeO-DOLT tryptamine, and on the scale there is a 25 milligram microdose of 5-MeO-DOLT. These are the alternative treatments that I would use to stop my cluster headaches.
These are the faithful of LSD, or acid heads.
There's still, in some parts of the community, a perception that psychedelics are associated with the hippie movement, for example, or with social unrest.
Dr. Martin Williams is a medicinal chemistry researcher and heads up the country's only psychedelic research organisation.
There's still a range of afflictions, of conditions for which we don't have reliable cures or treatments. People are willing to explore beyond standard Western medicine.
In 2015, world-first clinical trials of ayahuasca found a single dose of the substance diminished depressive behaviour by up to 82%. A US study last year found psilocybin significantly eased end-of-life anxiety for people with life-threatening cancer. But perhaps the most compelling results are from an ongoing study in the US using MDMA-assisted therapy to help, and in some cases cure, PTSD.
The overall success rate is around the 75% mark, and that actually expanded a little bit to upwards of 80% at a 4-year follow-up.
Our fears are dancing between us.
The US Food and Drug Administration has just approved the next round of trials, which means they could see MDMA used as a viable treatment for PTSD as soon as 2021.
You know, I'd get woken up during the night by shots being fired right outside where people were trying to climb over the wall and the Americans were shooting at them.
In 1993, retired Army Major Steve McDonald was deployed to Somalia during the bloody civil war.
It was a response to a very dire humanitarian situation in Somalia where many people were dying of starvation.
While Steve spent just 5 months there, the images of famine and violence have stayed with him.
Depression and anxiety and inability to sleep and concentrate and work eventually. You know, I couldn't work at all. At one point I relied on a handout from the RSL to pay my rent so I could stay off the streets.
A friend reached out to Steve to suggest an alternative treatment.
Here's an opportunity to attend an ayahuasca ceremony. And I didn't know what that was. In fact, I was totally drug naive. I drunk a lot of alcohol in the army, but had never touched any other type of drug. My depression pretty much went straight away, which was remarkable, and unlike anything I'd experienced before. So that really started me down the rabbit hole of, psychedelic medicine.
But the most profound change happened to Steve when he dosed MDMA.
It felt like all the energy centres in my body lit up, and when I woke in the morning, I felt different, considerably different. And I guess the best way to describe it would be an absence of background anxiety. In fact, I felt so well, I couldn't remember a time in my life where I'd felt that well previously.
The MDMA actually opens up what you would call a therapeutic window, which enables the patient to actually calmly address, re-experience and then process the trauma.
But the problem for both Steve and Dan, and many others like them, is psychedelics are illegal, and they could face hefty fines and potential jail time.
I'm breaking the law. I could get in trouble, but I'm breaking it so I can be a functioning member of society. I'm not out there selling anything illegal. It's completely personal. I do it so I can survive.
But many in the field believe to unlock the true power of psychedelics, they need to be prescribed by doctors and not dealers.
It would be so much better if we had an above-ground formal process by which people can attempt to improve their quality of life.
But Martin's efforts to get psychedelic research off the ground in Australia has been blocked twice by two different ethics committees.
We did prepare another proposal. Just one day before we presented that, we were told not to even bother because the university was simply not going to entertain the idea of psychedelic medical research.
Dan and Steve say they both can't afford to wait for Australia to catch up to the wave of research taking place overseas.
It's easy for academics and doctors to have theoretical discussions about, could we do this, would it work, and those sorts of things. But for somebody like me, been through the ringer with PTSD and come out the other side, and it worked.
Let's look at it. Let's at least have a dig around, because it could change so many people's lives.